Welcome to Just Between Uterus, the show that empowers people to take control of their health and wellness. Join us as we explore the latest research, trends, and issues from sexual and reproductive health to mental health and everything in between. We will share our knowledge and insights, and our guests will share their real life stories about their own gender specific health experiences.
Whether you're young and just starting to think about your health, a busy parent juggling work and family, an accomplished professional, or mature and navigating menopause and beyond, this podcast is for you. If you have a uterus or know someone with a uterus, this podcast is for you. Tune in each week for practical tips, inspiring stories, and a community of people who are committed to living their healthiest lives.
Created for us,
discussed by us,
for people with a uterus. The information shared on this podcast should not be used in lieu of medical or other healthcare provider advice. Please consult your provider for specific information regarding your pregnancy, postpartum, or other women's and gender-specific healthcare. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Just Between Uterus. Hey, Tiffany and Nichelle. How are y'all?
Hey.
Howdy.
How's your week going so far?
That is an amazing question. Why don't you tell me how your week is going? How was your evening today, Courtney and Tiffany?
I'm tired. It's a Friday night.
No, Nichelle is trying to be shady that we did not invite her to dinner.
Did not.
Oh, that went completely over my head.
But how would you have gotten here from Virginia, ma'am? I mean, listen. Everybody else is moving to Texas. Come on down too.
There's more than enough space for you.
Yeah, but y'all crazy down there. I mean, look, I'm trying to get up out of Virginia, but just didn't even invite me to the little impromptu get together. You know, me and my uterus was just up here in Virginia, but I'm glad y'all had a great time.
And you know what? This is a good reason for you or anybody else to move to Texas. Plug. Today, the state of Texas finally passed in both houses of the legislature extension of Medicaid for postpartum women. So
yes,
Texas will be able to have Medicaid for 12 months after they have their baby, after they give birth.
Yes.
Look at y'all making strides. Teach us how to get it together up here in Virginia.
I know.
Get together.
So my day job, I work for Texas Medicaid, and I know the email is going to be flying come Monday morning. So that is so exciting, such good news, and huge for maternity care and maternal mortality in the state of Texas. That was definitely long overdue.
Yeah, I'm happy. We have the 8th highest maternal mortality rate in the country. And 10% of all babies in the United States are born right here in Texas. This is not a show about maternal mortality for our listeners. We just happen to be talking about this at the second.
All right. Well, this episode is going to air in the month of June. June is Tiffany's birthday month, and all month long.
June babies.
Yes. This is also Pride's. Before we talk about Pride Month, it's also Men's Health Month. So listen up, because we will have a male co-host come on and talk about all things health from the male perspective. So I'm so excited about that episode.
Yeah, me too.
And how it affects the uterus. Because listen, you start talking about reproductive health. No, takes two. Takes a spermie and an eggie. No matter how it gets up there.
So yeah, this is also Pride Month.
Woo, woo.
So, yes, lots of celebration going on. Happy Pride Month. So for this episode, we wanted to talk about menstrual cycles and natural family planning.
Not the natural family planning. This is Courtney's thing. This is her bag. Since I have met you, oh my gosh.
Yes, it worked really well until it didn't. But I'll tell that story a little bit later. Okay, so Tiffany and I were talking, and originally we were going to do this as two separate episodes, right? The menstrual cycle and natural family planning. But the more we got into it and started talking, the more we realized you can't do one without the other. Like, you have to know one to effectively do the other. So they just really go hand in hand. So we just wanted to, talk about it all today. And, it's really amazing like how much people really don't know about their body, or about how either the menstrual cycle or natural family planning works. So this is definitely going to be a good discussion, some good education all the way around, and hopefully when people listen, they learn about their body, because it's not truly being taught in schools or, anywhere else for that matter. But before we get into it, how did y'all find out about menstrual cycles and periods, and how old were y'all when you got one? Is that too personal of a question?
Not for me.
Not for me. I mean, plus it's like the fields that we work in. Like, I don't know. I feel like just we've seen it all. I've seen a little bit of everything. So yeah, Tiffany, I'll let you go first.
Okay. So how did I learn about the menstrual cycle? I actually learned about it in class. Back then, we used to we didn't have health class in elementary school, but we did have it was like a day or maybe two that your parents had to sign a waiver for you to participate in. And at some point during the school year, they got us all together. I feel like this was either 4th or 5th grade. I want to say 5th grade. But anyway, elementary school kids got us all together. The boys went in one classroom and the girls went in another. And we watched this really old video about, like, you're becoming a young woman and whatever it was. And so we learned about starting your period. And then I remember after the video was over, they gave us these little bags. And inside each bag, it had like a small travel size deodorant stick. It had a pad, but it was like humongous in a cardboard box. Like, it was big.
Okay.
And I don't know, like some literature or something in there. And so I was really happy to take that home. And so I put my little pad under the kitchen or under the bathroom sink, because I knew that's where my mama kept hers. And I was waiting to start my period. Well, that didn't happen for another 2 years. So I was in the 7th grade. I will never forget the date, because it was actually Friday, January 13th, 1995.
Oh, wow.
And that was the day that...
Did you write down the time too?
No, but I remember a lot about that day. That was the day I started my period. So what happened was, okay, let me back up. 2 weeks before this happened, like right after we had gone back to school from Christmas break, I had just this horrible pain in my side. And so actually Friday the 13th was the day I had the pain. I started my period 2 weeks later. So anyway, I'm in middle school. I'm in school. I'm 12 years old in the 7th grade. All of my friends have started their periods at this point. I'm the late bloomer. And I have this horrible pain, right? So I go to the nurse's office and she's like, what's going on? What side is it on? It wasn't on the correct side for it to be my appendix. So they weren't really concerned about that. But I couldn't walk. Like, I couldn't do anything. So my dad had to come pick me up from school, take me home. 2 weeks later, I start my period, and I'm going to tell. So now I know, as an adult and a person who works in this field, that was the first time I ovulated. Mm-hmm. It was very, very painful for me. I didn't know what was going on, but now I can put 2 and 2 together. But the day I started my period, what had happened was, I sound crazy. Okay. So I'm in class. I'm in like 0 period for student council. And I feel something wet, sort of. But I was like, did I just laugh so hard I peed on myself a little bit? Like, that's what I was thinking, right? I laugh a lot. So I was like, no, I don't think that's it. So I just was like, okay, forget it. I'm imagining stuff. And I am a person who hates public restrooms. I mean, I hate them. So I've trained myself from being a very small child not to use the bathroom outside of my house.
Can you
So
come talk to my daughter, please? I'm sorry to interrupt, but please come talk to my daughter, because she feels like she has to bless every public bathroom we even, remotely come across. And I am such a germaphobe and I am just disgusted every time. I'm like, please, can you make it home, please? Or
Yeah,
like, I keep a potty seat in my car because I'm like, no, let's just go to the car.
I used to. So I was a latchkey kid. I started coming home from school by myself in the 3rd grade, and I would like be doing my dance on the porch as I'm opening the door because I got to use the bathroom. So I got to hurry up and get in. But so all that to say, I never went to the bathroom at school ever. Right. So I didn't even go this time. So I go throughout the whole day, go home. Mind you, I have on a pair of white pants this day. It ain't nothing but the grace of God that kept me from being embarrassed. But I go home and my mom is in the bathroom in the mirror rolling her hair. We're getting ready to, this is nighttime now. We're all getting ready to lay down. And I'm in the bathroom using the bathroom, and I look down and I scream, "Oh my God." And my mama was like, "What's wrong with you? What happened?" Right? So she turns around, and I think somehow, because there is dark, remember, I didn't bled all day. There is dark brown substance on my underwear. I thought I had done number 2 on myself and didn't know, and couldn't feel it, didn't know what was happening. And so I said, "Oh my God." And she turned around and she was like, what? And she looked down and she was like, "Oh girl, you started your period." Right. And so that was the beginning of what I knew about a period. Now, my mother is old school, born and raised in Louisiana. Like, there are certain things we just don't talk about, type of thing. The education I got from my mother was, this is a pad. This is how you put it on your underwear. Put 2 or 3 of them in your purse when you're having your period. Go to the bathroom. Don't let nobody ever see you take it out. That was the extent of my menstrual cycle education. And so stupid me, from the 7th grade through like the beginning of the 9th grade, took a purse to school 1 week a month that I had these pads inside of, because that's what my mother told me to do when I was on my period. So that is how I started my period. Oh, one more thing. And then, so that was a Friday. So that maybe Sunday, my Aunt Betty calls me, and she was like, "Oh, so I heard good news. I heard you became a woman." I was like, "Oh, my mama told you?" And she was like, "Congratulations." And I just thought, why is this lady congratulating me? And why did my mama tell my business? Because that was embarrassing.
Yes.
That's my story.
That's what they're
What's your story, Nichelle?
Oh my gosh. My story is similar. But I started my menstrual cycle at 8 years old. No, and it's so crazy because I was just telling my husband the other day, I was looking at my daughter, she's 18 months, but my son is 5.5. And so I was like, yo, I'm looking at like our son, and like he's 2.5 years from how old I was when I started my period. Like, that's crazy to me because I'm looking at him and he's such a little boy and thinking like, yo, my daughter is going to be here like literally in just a few years. Could possibly. But I started my period when I was 8 years old. And so we didn't get the health education or whatever until like 6th grade. So in Maryland, middle school is just 7th and 8th grade. You're in elementary school and then middle school. And we got it right before we went to middle school. So I had no prior planning. We had like separate bathrooms. And I don't know. I guess like kids are gross. So my mother never wanted to use the bathroom that we used. And I had never seen her like have a period. I had never seen it. I don't remember before this seeing a pad or a tampon or anything. And so I was in the house one day, and me and my brothers and my cousins were over, and we was cutting up. And my mom had told me, listen, stop doing that. You're going to hurt yourself. Right. So us being kids, we kept doing what we was doing, whatever. And I felt like you said, like this pain, but then I went to the bathroom and I had blood in my underwear. And I thought that I had hurt myself. And so that is why I was bleeding. And so I went downstairs and sat on the couch next to my mother and like sat there and would not move. And so finally she was just like, why are you like just sitting? Like, you're being weird. What are you doing? And I was like, I just, I have blood in my underwear. And she was like, why are you sitting on my couch then? You get up. So I was like, oh my God. So that was a whole mess. And I kind of got the same like talk you did, Tiffany. Like, here's a pad, put it on, and go do your thing. It's so funny you mentioned those pads in a box. So you know what they always remind me of? You know, like when you would go to the laundromat and they would have the little small detergents like in a box. Like that's exactly what they remind. And it was humongous. It was like, so we cloth diaper with my daughter, and we use like the little pre-folds, and that's what my first pad, like it was so big and bulky, like it was just like, oh, I don't even know. It's like you just wrapped up a towel and put it inside your underwear, and it was so uncomfortable. It was just the worst, and that is the thing I got. But none of my friends were like talking about this, and so you don't really know how to approach it. So when we ended up getting, I just never kind of really talked about it. I had really, really painful periods. There were times where I had to, be taken out of school. And when we get to, talking about birth control, I went on birth control for the reason of having painful periods at 14. But I was 8 years old and like none of my friends were talking about it. So then we kind of got to the point where they were talking about health education and all the boys are like, ew. And the girls was like, oh my gosh. But like I had already started my period. So I was just like, okay, I guess it's just not what we talk about. And funny story, I got my pad. My parents are very deeply religious, so nothing went up inside there. Nothing went up inside the vagina. You just weren't, nobody taught me how to apply a tampon. And I did not use my first tampon, y'all. This is embarrassing, kind of a funny story, until I got to Navy boot camp because we had to swim on the first day. On one day, they make you do your swim test. And I started my period. And I did not know how to insert a tampon. So at 22 years old, I had about 4 people around me, somewhere between 18 and 20 something, 2 women showing me how to put in a tampon. Because I was like, oh, you want to swim today? Like, and I was just like, well, they was like, you can't put a pad on. Like, you can't wear underwear underneath you. You had to wear like just your swimsuit, certain gear. And so I literally, like, as a grown adult in my 20s, had other women showing me how to put a tampon on. And it was just, period chronicles.
You talking about swimming? I have a friend who, when we were younger, she swore that somebody told her, when you are in water, you can't bleed. And so we weren't wearing tampons. We were young, like middle school, maybe high school, but we weren't wearing tampons. And yeah, she would go swimming. She was like, oh, don't worry, it's impossible. You can't bleed when you're in the water because like the water pressure or something keeps you from doing it. So you won't bleed. I'm thankful that she never had a horrible accident in a pool because
it doesn't. Wait, it doesn't?
Huh?
It doesn't? It doesn't stop you from bleeding?
No, you can definitely get some red water around you. I mean, you're not gonna fill up the pool with red water. But
because I'm an avid swimmer. I swim like every day. I'll be like, oh no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Get a streak or 2 following behind you in the pool, and people wondering why you got red Kool-Aid coming up behind you.
Oh my God!
I know, Courtney.
Let's see. So I might have been about 8, 9, maybe 10, somewhere in there. And my mom handed me a book, and it was all about like becoming a young lady and getting a period and what that meant and what it was. So that was like, I had to read that book, and that was like really the only education I got. And so my mom had a hysterectomy. I might have been about 9 or 10. So even before then, though, I never saw any period products, never saw anything like that, like nothing. So after I read this book, I'm in the bathroom with my mom, and I was like, well, why aren't you bleeding? And she was like, what? And I was like, well, yeah, where's your period? Like, I just assume like once you get a period, like you just bleed every day forever for the rest of your life.
The woman with the issue of blood.
Yeah, so then she had to really explain, like, no, that's only, during a certain time. Blah blah blah. So fast forward, I'm 11 and my parents are divorced. So I was at my dad's apartment for the weekend. Well, this little girl that we always played with every time we went over there, she was having a slumber party. And so my dad let my sister and I go. And middle of the night, we are watching Freddy Krueger. So I am scared out of my mind. It's dark. I'm in somebody's house. I don't know. I mean, I know them, but I'm not in my own house. And I just feel like something, was wet. Like, what's going on? Well, at that very moment, everybody decides to cut on the lights and let's all go take a bathroom break. And so I'm like trying to wait my turn, but I purposely go last because I'm kind of thinking like this might be it. Like, what is this? So I purposely go last, and sure enough, yes, it was, blood. Well, the girl's mom was pregnant, so she had nothing as well.
Oh no.
And so then I'm at my dad's house for the weekend, so I'm definitely not telling him. Like, absolutely not. He will never know of this. So yeah, that was probably a Friday or Saturday night, and of course, I went back home to my mom on Sunday. So yeah, I had wadded up toilet paper.
Oh my God.
The rest of the weekend.
Oh.
I was not telling my dad that.
Oh
And so when I got back to my mom, I couldn't even say the words. Like, I just showed her my underwear and she was like, "Oh, okay, so you need a pad." And we were at my aunt's house. But I don't remember my aunt being there, but my cousin, her daughter, who I'm close to, but she came and she was like, "Oh, you started your period, huh?" And I was just so embarrassed. Like, oh my gosh, why do you even know? Why did she say something? Like, this is so embarrassing.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, some of my friends from elementary school had started before me. So it was kind of that, like that anxious waiting, like, when's it gonna be my turn? And then like when it was just like so uneventful. Like, okay, that's it.
Just
Yeah, all right,
anticlimactic.
well, I guess I got a period now. Um, but yeah, that was really the extent of my education. Now I do remember I went to private school and I remember the boys had to go with one of our male teachers and the girls were in one class, but we were in 7th grade. So clearly way too late for a lot of us. In terms of like if this is what you want to educate us on. But I don't remember specifically what the education was about or what we talked about, but I do remember being separated, so I'm assuming that that's what it was. But yeah, it was way too late, and I don't know, I feel like I want to do better with my daughter. I want to teach her more and answer more questions. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, because boys need to know too, but I was watching TV and a commercial about Always with Wings came on, and my son, asked, "What's that?" And so I tell him, and I make it a policy to always be honest. If he asks me a question, I'm going to be honest about it, and of course, a kid appropriate way. But so now he's asking me, and now we're talking about menstrual cycles and a period, and then you could get pregnant. Well, how do you get pregnant? So it just became this whole rabbit hole. But Nichelle, when you mentioned the pads and the tampons, my mom, to this day, almost 40, is still like absolutely no tampons. No tampons. Like she was not buying them. I could not use them. None of that. So if I was on my period and it was pool time, tough. Oh well. Because she was not buying tampons. But not only that, she did not buy name brand anything.
Oh
So
Jesus.
here I am going to school with this big long pad that almost goes from my belly button to my back. So it's like
No.
I have a diaper on. I mean, I literally had to beg, "Can we please buy thin Always with Wings? Please, just this one time, please." And so it wasn't until college that that I started using tampons. I just like looked at the pamphlet, the little info packet paper that comes with the tampons. I had to teach myself. But I went home to New Orleans. This was a couple months ago, and she saw like a pack of tampons on the dresser. Oh, you use those? Yes, religiously. I mean, not now so much. I use a cup now, and we'll talk about menstrual products in another show. But I use a cup mainly. But we were out of town. I didn't want to have to like worry about you know transporting it and cleaning it and all of that stuff. So I had the tampons, and then once we get back home, like a day or two later, she sends me a TikTok video about some people that have gotten sick with TSS, and I'm just like.
Toxic
Listen.
shock?
Yes, listen.
Oh, come
I didn't even
on.
respond back to the text message because at this point, like I am almost 40. I have been using tampons well over 20 years. I'm not going to stop, okay? I'm not. I'm just not. So yeah, it's just funny to me that we all have these, different stories. And our children will have their own stories one day as well.
I'm like, I know nowadays, people do things like period parties, and I know period is not slang, but obviously it's not called. The technical clinical term is not period, but I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I will get there. And my son has major like penis pity, I call it, because he doesn't have penis envy. He just feels very sad that like everybody doesn't get to have this. And so even like, I don't try to keep him away, but he's very like intrusive in space. And so like, he's just like, Mommy, what are you putting inside of your underwear? And I'm just like, please, like, I need privacy. Like, please. He was like, and he will come inside the bathroom with me. Like, this is not what privacy means. Like, please, like, go. It's just, oh my gosh, he's just so. But
see, I had to make that rule for my kids. After I think about 2 or 3, bathroom is private time. And I had to just draw that boundary. Bathroom is private time because my husband was like, hey, look, when you in the bathroom, you might want to keep him out because he was trying to put pads on his pull-up. So so I was like, okay, well, you might be right. You absolutely might be right. So yeah, I just, after, I mean, when they're super little, yes, they don't know and don't remember and can't talk and whatever. But after about 3, I really do, and I'm strong on that boundary. That bathroom is private time. I don't even like talking through the door a whole lot, but I will if you feel like you absolutely need to tell me something while I'm in the bathroom. Same for each other though. With I have a son and a daughter, and I don't allow them to interrupt each other in the bathroom. Bathroom is private time. She's using the bathroom. You need to wait till she comes out to tell her whatever you need to tell her. Don't sit by the door banging on the door while he's in the bathroom. Like bathroom is private time. So I just have that boundary for my kids. So yeah, they don't really remember. Of course, he doesn't remember. Put the pad on a pull up.
I think, yeah, I mean, clearly I don't have kids, but I think at the point at which they can talk and begin to put 2 and 2 together and rationalize and things like that is too much. And I say that because I have a younger cousin that I was around a lot when she was infant and a toddler, and I used to take care of her and whatever. And I remember one day we were getting dressed and I had her in the shower with me, and she was like, Tiffany, why do you and my mommy have hair right there and I don't? And I'm like, okay, no more. That's it. That's it. You're done. So yeah, after that, I was like, oh, once they can talk, once they start to realize things, no ma'am.
I had to use the bathroom I was picking my son up from daycare. He was maybe 2. And so I had to use the bathroom, and I'm squatting over the seat, and he's like, you pee out your butt? I'm like, oh good Lord.
DJ asked me to this day when Shelby's penis is coming in, and I keep telling this young man that it's not going to happen for her. Like she's not just going to grow in. Like we're going to have to do something else if that's what she chooses to do. But sir, it's just not going to grow in. And it's so crazy, like when you talk about these things and like how they're not really talked about, like they're taboo. And I pray that my husband doesn't listen to this episode, or my father-in-law. But when I had my daughter, it was COVID. Well, it's still COVID outside, but it was 2021. And so they had laxed the policies, and then, it had spiked and it went back up. And so they had changed the policies where like, it was only limited to 2 people. And so my father-in-law is remarried. And so my in-laws were watching my son, and they had to choose who was able to come to the hospital. And so it was my husband, and it was my father-in-law. He missed my son's birth. So he was really excited that he was able to be here to come after my daughter. But when he came to visit, they had to take my catheter out. And so
your father-in-law or your husband?
My father-in-law was there. They had to take my catheter out. And so I had told them, like, something had happened and they were waiting. And so they came back, and, when shift change happened, like, you're not about to you need to do what you need to do so you can go home. And so she was like, listen, I'm going to have to take this catheter out. And so I was like, okay. And my father-in-law was like, and she had a sheet there, so he wasn't able to get like there, but he was just like, oh, you got to go back up in there. Did they leave something in there? And I was just oh, sir, you are a grown adult man with children and grandchildren, and you still don't know how the uterus works. Like, it's still there. I'm like, they're not taking it. He's like, did they leave something up? He's holding the baby. Did they leave something up in there? Because he's that type of person. I was like, no, they did not leave anything up in there. It's in another spot. But yeah, so.
That is hilarious. Okay, so let's get into it, Tiffany. Tell us and tell the people all about the menstrual cycle. What is it?
Sure. I will just say this is one of my favorite things to talk about, and was one of my favorite things to teach when I was a maternity nursing professor, because I realized I never knew this stuff. I was a whole labor and delivery nurse and couldn't tell you this much detail about the menstrual cycle. So before we talk about it, let's talk about vocabulary. There are 3 words that you should really know around the menstrual cycle, how we describe it. And then there are a couple of different terms related to hormones. So menses is just period, right? It's your period. It's your menstrual cycle. It's the act of being on your menstrual cycle or passing blood from your uterus. Menarche is the start of your period. So you only have menarche or menarche, depending on how you pronounce it, once. It's the first period you ever have. That's it. You never have it again. And statistics show that, at least in the United States, the typical age of menarche for girls in this country is somewhere between 10 and 16. That's the typical range. And the average onset of menarche is 12.4 years. So almost 12 and a half years. I was 12 years old right there. Actually, I was 12 and a half. So yeah. Then we have amenorrhea, which is the absence of a period. And this can happen for a number of different reasons. If you are a parent and your child has not begun to menstruate by the time that she is 15 and her hormones are normal, she may have what's called primary amenorrhea. So she has not yet started her period. She has the absence of menses. She has not gone through menarche. She might have primary amenorrhea. There's also a secondary amenorrhea, and that happens after somebody's already started their period, but there are different reasons that the period might stop. For instance, if you are a sports athlete and you do heavy sports, and you have a really low percent of body fat, you might not have a period, or your period might stop for a period of time. That sounds funny. If you take certain medications, you might not have a period. Or say, for instance, you're taking birth control, hormonal birth control, and you do not allow the gap in between. So, for instance, with birth control pills, right? There's a week that you're taking, you either don't take anything or you're taking a pill that doesn't have hormones in it. And then you should menstruate. And sort of in the middle of that week, you should start. If you don't do that and you just want to keep going without a period, that's a form of amenorrhea. Or for people who've had a hysterectomy, they're not going to have a period because they don't have a uterus. So there are reasons that folks don't have periods. So the quick and dirty way to talk about the menstrual cycle is knowing that 3 things are happening at all times, every day of the month, as you're going through the menstrual cycle. The menstrual cycle itself, typically, we say it lasts about 28 days. It can be like 25 days for some people, maybe up to 35 for others, but typically about 28 days. And so within this 28-day period of time, there are follicles being developed. And if they are fertilized, they'll turn into eggs eventually. There are hormones being released from your pituitary gland and your ovaries. And then your endometrial lining, if you're not pregnant, is thickening, but then needs to shed. And so this is happening in different phases all the time. And what I tell people to pay attention to, especially if you're like a nursing student, you have to know this stuff. But even if you don't, there are 4 basic hormones that take part in the menstrual cycle. FASH, follicular stimulating hormone, LH, luteinizing hormone, estrogen, and progesterone. Those might sound familiar if you are taking hormonal birth control. They have either one or sometimes both of those hormones in them. So what essentially happens at the beginning of your menstrual cycle, which is day 0, right? So you've done all your bleeding. Now your cycle's about to start over again, or actually you're about to start bleeding. Day 0 or day 1, you start your period. So your body is shedding this lining of the endometrium or endometrial lining that you don't need because there's no fertilized egg to be implanted into the endometrial wall. You do that for about 5 to 7-ish days on average. And then the lining starts to build back up in preparation for a fertilized egg if that happens in the next month. Your FSH is pretty low at this time. It has a small bump in it, but it's pretty low. What happens at day 1, so from day 1 to like day 14, right before day 14, your estrogen is just building. So you have a lot of estrogen around the time that you're going to ovulate. Your LH is also really high right before, like immediately before ovulation. And your FSH is as high as it's going to get right before ovulation. Not as high as LH or estrogen, but high nonetheless. And so have you guys ever experienced like when you're ovulating, you just feel real good? Like you feel pretty, you feel kind of sexy-ish. You think your body looks great, like right before you ovulate. This is around like day 12, 13-ish of your cycle. And then boom, 14, that egg drops. So like the body is giving you all these great feel-good hormones. So you feeling yourself a little bit. So you're going on ahead and get pregnant.
Oh yeah, my husband knows when I'm ovulating.
Oh yeah,
You too, because I used to be like that, but now it's so funny because now when I'm ovulating after this second child and 11 pregnancies, my body's like, don't touch it. Maybe it's psychological, right? Like, do not touch me right now. But you feeling yourself, little razzle dazzle, get your hair done.
You do. I'm telling you, the time of the month that I feel prettiest, that my skin is clearest, that I feel like my waist is snatched is like within the 24 hours before I start ovulating. And I am celibate, praise the Lord. So I don't have sex with anybody, including myself. At that time, that's when I pray probably the most. And yeah, because it'd be real out in these streets. And so anyway, all these hormones go up, you ovulate, right? So you drop that egg. And then if the egg is not fertilized, this lining that continues to grow up until the last maybe 2-3 days before your period comes, it needs to shed. It needs to go somewhere. As your lining is getting thicker and all of your FSH, your estrogen, your LH drops, immediately after you ovulate, your progesterone starts to go up. So have you guys ever heard of women getting progesterone shots to help with preterm labor? That's why.
Or there is some research about sustaining pregnancy. Like if you have a history of miscarriage, my OB actually had me on it with my daughter for, oh my gosh, it felt like forever. Those big old horse pills. So yes.
Yep. So it is to prevent It is to prevent your body from having a thinner lining of the endometrium, right? So you want to have this thick lining that's nice and plush and that's not going anywhere to fertilize this egg. When you don't have that lining, it's either because you're menstruating or you're about to have your baby. So you really don't need that much progesterone. And so, yeah, that's essentially how the menstrual cycle works. Day 1 to day 28, you just start over and over and over again until you go through menopause.
It's funny researching this and looking up stuff in ancient times, and before we had calendars and people knew how to tell time and all the things. The menstrual cycle is actually how they, like, it was like a calendar for them. They could plan or know the months by a woman's menstrual cycle. So I thought that was pretty cool and interesting.
Absolutely. There are a lot of things that should be done based on the menstrual cycle timetable. And if you know how the body works and you know when to be careful having sex because you might get pregnant, so that natural family planning, then there are things that just won't happen. Like, I always wonder why people plan weddings when they're ovulating. If they're not trying to get pregnant and you're not on birth control. I hear about these honeymoon babies so much, and I'm like, sweetheart, did you not ask anybody? Did you not talk to anybody about how this works?
But to defend that a little bit, weddings typically are planned a year out. Like, sometimes the day, I mean, yes, it might be a 28-day cycle, but if you have 31-day months, like, it's hard to predict that I will be ovulating next January 17th on my wedding day. That, like,
no, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. You can only get pregnant like 3 days a month.
It's a little bit more than that. But yes, but what I'm saying is, at least for me, and I'm pretty regular, I don't have a period on the 15th of every month. Like, it might
not on the 15th, but every 4th week you do.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, it's hard to plan that out a year out, when, like, this week it might be the 15th, next week it might be, or next month it might be the 18th, the next month it might be the 16th. I mean, yes, you're pretty regular. If you're regular, you're pretty regular, but I don't know. Ovulation was not something I was thinking about in my wedding.
To plan it when they're not on their period, obviously, because they want to get, clapping of said cheeks is that technical term. You know what I mean? They're trying to, have they little fine razzle dazzle. But I do know people who are like, oh, my, can't plan it on my period, or like, oh no, we can't have like the bachelorette weekend. Like, this is, I'm gonna be on my period. Like, I want to turn up. But yeah, I never thought about it in the context of ovulation. That's interesting.
So if you're gonna get married, go ahead and plan that thing week 3.
That was not on my mind when we picked
plan it week 2. I mean, not week 2. No, Lord, don't plan it week 2. Plan it right after
week 1.
You finish, yeah, right after your period's over.
Have more days that
So if you're planning a wedding a year out, you really like gonna be like, no, I can't do the first week of January.
I would, but that's just me.
I would too, because I'm a reformed city girl. So yeah, absolutely would.
A period was the last thing on my mind when we chose a wedding date.
Listen, all this celibacy is going to need to end the night that I get married. So there can be no period in sight. How about that?
Oh, I am wheezing over here. Oh my goodness.
Sorry. So yeah, that's how the menstrual cycle works anyway. All right. So Courtney, now I mentioned it, but tell us a little bit about natural family planning.
Yes. So natural family planning is also known as fertility awareness method. So according to the National Institute of Health, it's basically utilizing fertility awareness methods to prevent or achieve pregnancy. So it's knowing your menstrual cycle and where you are in your menstrual cycle to prevent or get pregnant. It's really that simple. So women are typically fertile from 5 days before ovulation to 24 hours after. Now, with that said, once you ovulate, once your body releases the egg can only survive for 24 hours, right? However, sperm can survive for 3 to 5 days. So that's why you look at when you're going to ovulate, and then you typically will either abstain or use a barrier method or pull and pray.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Please don't use the pull-out method. Please. I know way too many babies that have been born.
Way too many pull-out babies. So yeah, you would, if you're ovulating, let's say on the 15th, then from like the 10th through the 20th, you would use a backup method to prevent pregnancy if that's your goal. And obviously, if you're trying to get pregnant, then go for it. That's when you do the most so you can achieve pregnancy. So with natural family planning or fertility awareness methods, there are basically 3 types of methods. So one is the basal body temp. So you get your basal body thermometer, and you can take your temperature, or you should take your temperature every morning before getting out of the bed. Now, obviously, this is for somebody that has a typical, go to bed at night, wake up in the morning type of life. You take your temperature literally as you roll over. So before you drink anything, before you get up and do anything, take your temperature. During ovulation.
Under your arm, in your ear, or in your vagina?
No, in your vagina.
In your vagina? You know somebody who took a temperature in their vagina?
Yes. Listen, I don't know. Okay. Now I gotta get a disclaimer. I'm not a nurse, but no, like in the fertility groups. I mean, and mind you, we're all like, what stuff like this reminds me of? You know how like your parents be like, your little friends don't know no better than you do. Like we just all winging it. Yes, I know people who took the thermometer and took a.
No, that's not what it means.
Oh no, you can do under the tongue or axillary, which means under the arm. Those work just fine. There's no need to strip naked to take your temperature. I've never even heard of a vaginal temp.
What kind of thermometer do we use for this? I'm just joking.
That's what I want to know. Do you mark it? God forbid somebody come back and put it in their mouth.
This is just
okay, I don't want to laugh at anybody's lack of knowledge. However, no, you do not need to take a vaginal temperature.
Okay.
But yeah, so take your temperature first thing, soon as you wake up, soon as you open your eyes, and write it down. During ovulation, your temperature will rise 0.5 degree to 1 degree and stay there until your next period. So, obviously this requires some tracking. You're writing this down every single day. And there's plenty of apps out there to help you out with that. One of the things I love is a company called Temp Drop. So I mentioned, taking your temperature in the morning as soon as you wake up requires you to have a typical daytime schedule or go to bed at night. But if you're a night shift worker or you just have a schedule that's all over the place, Temp Drop is a wearable thermometer. So you just wear it while you're sleeping on your arm, and it comes with a little strap, and it comes with an app, and it charts your temperatures for you. Like, it is beautiful. Loved it when I was using it. So that's another thing. And, plug for Temp Drop. I'll tag them so they can give us a shout out. Hey, y'all. Let's see. Another method is cervical mucus method. So when you're ovulating, your cervical mucus or your discharge is clear and stretchy like an egg, like egg whites. So another reason to pay attention to your body. All people with a vagina have discharge. I remember a couple years ago on social media, it was this like clean panty challenge, and people were showing like the inside of their underwear and that they didn't have discharge. Okay, well, you're not natural. Like, that's not normal. And, yeah, something is not right. And clearly, like, you just put on a new pair of underwear. Like, we're not stupid.
Yeah.
But anyway, when you're ovulating, that discharge will turn clear like egg whites, and it literally looks like egg whites. So that can also let you know that you are ovulating. So clearly that you're already ovulating. So hopefully, you haven't already like had a oops night.
That's an appropriate question, because
this is a family-ish show, ma'am. So Is it that appropriate? Is it that inappropriate?
You know, it is
No,
inappropriate.
I already know where you're going. No, don't ask that question. We'll talk offline.
Okay.
What she was gonna ask how it tastes?
No,
Oh,
no, it's not.
Okay, well, you might as well ask the question now.
So for the people who are listening, this will be another episode, but I've had my own for fertility issues. And so like with the mucus method, I could never get it down because we tried all the things to like get pregnant and stay pregnant. I could never get down with it because I couldn't tell the difference between like, so there are different types of mucuses, like it should be clear and it should be this. I couldn't tell the difference between that and the sperm. Like it'd be a lot, the sperm be up there and then
oh no, it's a lot thicker than sperm.
Okay.
And sperm is it has a yellowish tint to it too.
Yeah, it's like sticky.
This is like clear, like milky white.
Okay.
And it doesn't smell like sperm. Sperm has a very distinct smell.
It's like salt water.
So it doesn't smell. Doesn't smell like anything. If it smells, you got BV. Go get that. Go get it handled. I don't mean to, I'm not like trying to be funny, but for real, people have BV and don't know. They think that's natural. It's not. But I'm sorry. Keep going, Courtney.
Yes. So that's the cervical mucus method. Moving on. Next one is the rhythm method. So again, if you have regular cycles, you have a 28 to 32 day cycle, ovulation typically takes place around day 14. So because sperm can live for 5 days, like I mentioned earlier, you would abstain from typically day 8 to day 19 so that you don't get pregnant off of sperm that's just living around in there.
Don't have your wedding days 8 through 14.
I'm glad you had the math for me because I was trying to carry the one. I'm that old school. I'm like, okay, so what day? Okay.
So the first day you start bleeding is day 1. So if you're on a regular 28 to 32 day cycle, count to day 14. So day 1, 2, 3, most people will typically bleed anywhere between 3 to 7 days. So even after you stop bleeding, 8, 9, 10 on up to 14, that's when you actually ovulate. But again, if you've had sex on day 9, that sperm can still be alive in there. And once that egg gets released, it's like, hey, hello, how are you? Yes, you have to. Yeah, you would have to block off those days. Either, again, a barrier method like a condom, either just don't have sex, or pull and pray. I mean, that's really all you got. Pull and pray.
This is a terrible method. Please don't let me
go get y'all pregnant. Don't do it.
She is.
I gave you all the methods, so choose. Listen, I'm not claiming no kids, so
we ain't paying no child support.
I don't pay child support, please. I need some child support for the ones I got. But yeah, no. Please, consult your doctors. But most of all, even if you're not trying to get pregnant, or if you are, try to take some time to really learn your body. Because again, typical health classes teach us the uterus. You have a period, egg meets sperm, the end, right? They don't tell you that you can actually know in your body when you are most fertile. Again, the cervical mucus method. Some people can actually feel when they ovulate. It's like a little pain in their lower abdomen. I don't get that pain, or at least I haven't noticed it, but I can absolutely tell when I'm ovulating. And, just personal story, after I had my daughter, throughout my life, I've tried different methods of birth control. And for one reason or another, nothing just was comfortable for me. Everything I tried, it was an issue I had a problem with, or, somewhere or the other. So after I had my daughter, I did not want to be on birth control again. I'm done putting all these hormones in my body. I don't want to be on this stuff. All the health warnings, those are real. So I just didn't want to take those risks anymore. And my husband wasn't quite ready to get a vasectomy at that time, nor we weren't. Let me just say that we weren't. I kind of knew my daughter was going to be my last one, but we were like, well, a couple years, let's just see. We weren't ready to like make a permanent decision just yet. So when it was time for me to, figure out birth control after my daughter, I was like, okay, well, we got to try this natural family planning method. And so I got the temp drop thing that I mentioned, because I don't go to bed at the same time or wake up at the same time. And it connected to an app, so it made it easy for me to chart my temperatures. I paid attention to the cervical mucus, and I also paid attention to the days of the week. And so as I'm tracking this, and there's plenty of apps out there that can help you do this. So you don't have to, play guessing games. And some of the apps, the more you track and the more you write things and keep up with it, it'll start telling you your fertile window is here. You should have a period here. And so we did the rhythm method for like 4 years. And then one night I forgot to check the calendar, and it was like, oops. But I should be all right. I should be good.
Yeah. Not good.
Yeah, no, I was not good. So I did have a third pregnancy. Unfortunately, it ended in miscarriage, and that's another topic and story for another day. But yeah, natural family planning really does work, or the rhythm method, or whatever you want to call it, fertility awareness method. It really does work, but it requires you to really be in tune with your body. And that's something that I think we should teach people from the beginning, right? Think about how many pregnancies could be prevented just by knowing about your body and when you're ovulating and when you can get pregnant. Think how many unwanted pregnancies, and this is free. We don't have to go to the doctor for it. We don't have to rely on birth control pills. It's free, and it really does work when you do it correctly and pay attention to your body.
And I want to point out that this is not just the responsibility of the person with the uterus. If you are in a relationship, like even for me, my husband was like, you ovulating, ain't you? And sometimes I'm like, let me look at this app. Oh, you know what? I sure am. Okay, get up off it. Not today, not tonight. Okay, day 8 to 19. We got to figure it out, and knowing my body. But another thing too is like people always think that like natural family planning is this like crunchy sort of like there's a certain type of person. But for some people, like natural family planning is one of the only options. And like Courtney said, we'll get into this later, but I have similar issues with birth control where I cannot take it. Like I cannot. It doesn't give what it's supposed to give for me. I have been pregnant many times on many different forms of birth control that just didn't work. And so I had to, like Courtney said, really figure out my body, like, okay, what's happening? And your body will change. Absolutely. My body, my pre-children body, pre-pregnancy body that's not the same body that I got today. Even, just between the different pregnancies, like cycles, may have changed and may have been a little bit different. And so, just really just paying attention to what's going on inside of you, what you're feeling. And it can be very easy. Like you don't even have to write. There's an app for everything. Like I have an app for my period and ovulation and things like that. And you put it right up in there. It tells you like, hey, and it'll calculate, hey, it's been a couple months. You've been a little bit off. Your periods may be this length, or you're taking birth control, so they may be shorter, or whatever the case may be. But just really paying attention to your body and what's going on inside of you.
Yes. So another method, or natural method of fertility that some people use is called lactational amenorrhea. So Tiffany told us that the amenorrhea means you just don't have a period, or the period has stopped. Lactation obviously means when you're breastfeeding. So after you have a baby, you may not get a period right away if you're breastfeeding. So come on, lactation extraordinaire. Tell us about that.
So listen, and I get that question a lot. Like a lot of people ask me, like, can I still get pregnant while I'm breastfeeding? Or, oh my gosh, I'm breastfeeding. Why do I have a period? Like, why did it come back? And I'm just like, oh, sweet thing. Bless your heart, as they say in the South. So we talk about, they call it LAM. That's the nickname, LAM, because lactational amenorrhea method is very long to say. But for that to happen, certain criteria have to be met. And then I'm going to give you a little background into this as well. So 3 criteria have to be met. 1, your menstrual cycle has not returned yet, right? So you can't have lamb after your period has returned from after having the baby. It is a different type of amenorrhea if it happens then. But anything within the first 56 days is considered, what is it, lochia? Lochia, how do you say it?
Lochia.
Lochia. Oh, like Marvel. Okay, like Loki. But okay. Lochia. Anything within the first 56 days, that's what it's considered. So it's not your period. So I will get parents who say, hey, you know, I was bleeding, because even with lactation, and Courtney knows, you have to ask a lot of different things because they can affect human milk feeding and the production of prolactin in milk. So I'll ask, like, how's your cycle going? Like, how are you feeling? What's going on down there? And they'll say, well, you know, I stopped bleeding, but then my period came. You know, I just had a baby 2 weeks ago. Like, that is your lochia. The second qualification that needs to be met is that you are, this is very specific. And so people who know me know that I'm all about pumping. I'm a pump queen, pump champion, pump goat. But you must be nursing your baby on demand, both night and day, and not feeding any other foods or liquids regularly. Meaning, if you are supplementing with a bottle of breast milk or a bottle of formula, you wouldn't meet the second qualification, right? And then number 3, baby is less than 6 months old. So if all of these criteria are not met, consider another form of contraception. This is the premise of LAM. And when we say like nursing on demand, another thing that they've added too is like the introduction of pacifiers, right? Because the baby could be suckling at the breast instead of suckling on a pacifier. And when you do that, you can disrupt this. That being said, because I like to do my research. I like 3 scholarly references or it didn't happen. I was reading out here on Google Scholar or Al Gore's internets. I'm showing my age a little bit. These internets do not belong to Beyonce. They belong to Al Gore. Anyway, just Google that. It's a little
they
thing.
belong to UCLA, baby. That's where the internet was founded. Go Bruins.
Lord, here we go. This lamb is not a surefire thing, okay? Like, do not bet your bottom dollar on lamb, okay? Please, just, again, use one of these methods that we've talked about because you don't want to mess around and find out. And on lamb, you're playing a little bit of Wild Wild West out here, a little bit of Russian roulette. You really want to make sure. And as new parents, like, it's so easy for one of these things to like miss. Man, I overslept and I slept through a nursing session. And let me tell you something, the body at this point is so sensitive. Those hormones, it's not something you can see. You can't tell when your estrogen is rising or your progesterone is rising. You can't see that on your body. You can't tell if prolactin is up or down. You can't tell if you're having issues with the pituitary. That being said, you sleep through 2 nursing sessions, very slight work. And next thing you know, your period about to come back. Next thing you know, you're ovulating again. So you absolutely can get pregnant while breastfeeding. 100%. Been there, done that way too many times. Seeing clients come in, I ask them all the time, they say, my milk supply has gone down. Like, I just don't know what happened. Like, just out of nowhere. Could you possibly be pregnant? And they'd be like, no. And then, Courtney, do you remember that time where we had that girl in the group and she was like, I was like, friend, like, take a pregnancy test. She's like, no, I'm not. She came back 2 weeks later and was like, yes, I am. I was like, listen, but I can't, my baby, her baby was 4 months old. And she was just like, I can't, like, it can't possibly be. Like, oh yes, the things are happening in there. And like I said, the body changes. So if you were able to feel ovulation beforehand, right? After you having a baby, you may not. It may feel like growing pains. It may feel like the uterus contracting. It may feel like normal, just your body kind of figuring out what its new normal is. Whole time, you done dropped the egg. And now we got another baby to breastfeed, which is amazing. So bring him to us. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, the way our modern society doesn't really allow, in most cases, or in a lot of cases, let me say that, lactation or breastfeeding strictly at the breast every single time 24 hours a day for the next 6 months of the baby's life. People are going back to work. Somebody, you might want a day off or a night off or go out for a night or two, and
might be out at Target. You might be out with your friend because it's her birthday month having a meal, but you don't invite your friends.
Oh, here you go. But I wanted to make a point real quick back to fertility awareness methods. According to the National Health Service, it can be 99% effective if done correctly. So again, that goes back to my point. If you are in tune with your body, if you pay attention, if you track, what's going on with your body, you can have birth control or not, or you again use it to get pregnant, but you can have birth control for the free. Everybody knows I love Ricky Lake, and she came out with The Business of Being Born, but she also has a documentary talking about the business of birth control. And I think it just highlighted a really great point that we don't teach people about how their bodies truly work. And because now people don't really know, now we get to sell them a product. We get to sell them a birth control pill or, whatever. So, and Nichelle, like Nichelle said, natural family planning is my thing. Like, I just didn't want the hormones. So I researched it, and I am forever a fan of natural family planning. Like I said, it worked for me until it didn't, until, we had that slip up that, one time after 4 years. But it just takes diligence. It takes paying attention, and natural family planning can absolutely work. Again, and there's some caveats. Of course, everything doesn't work for everybody. You have to have regular periods, of course. And, it just requires paying attention to your body.
And see, I'm the anti-Courtney because I didn't necessarily choose natural family planning. It just chose me. But like she said, all the things she said, you don't have to, I don't know, like, I'm not against natural family planning, but at the same time, there are situations kind of like we said, where it's just like, this is what it is. This is what we're doing right now. This is what we're using. And it's not to just like your period stuff. Like Courtney said, it can be used. A lot of these methods are used for parents who are, experiencing fertility issues or planning pregnancy. Like, on the flip side, we're talking about preventing pregnancy, but like, these methods are also used to plan pregnancy. Some parents will say, okay, Lamb, like, I want to have another baby. I want to have my kids close together. Okay, boom. Like, let's make it do what it do. Or, hey, we're trying to have a child. We're doing whatever. We're checking the cervical mucus. We're checking our temperature. We're doing all these things. So it's not just to prevent pregnancy, but like, all of these methods can be used to also get pregnant if that is what you so choose.
Yes. For more information, the two things that when I was first starting my natural family planning journey, I read a book called Taking Charge of Your Fertility. Really great book, really insightful. I strongly encourage all young girls to read that book, because this is what we should be teaching girls before they have a period, like how the actual menstrual cycle works. And also, paying attention to your body can let you know when you are fertile and when you could get pregnant, so that you can avoid pregnancy until you're ready for it. So it's Taking Charge of Your Fertility is the book. And then there's another podcast called Fertility Friday, and there's all sorts of discussions surrounding fertility and natural family planning. Highly recommend you check both of those out, and listen with your daughters, listen with your friends and your family, and whoever has a uterus that needs to learn more about their body. Even if you like your birth control and you're happy with your birth control, keep doing that, but still learn about your body. Because that we should already know this. This should be common knowledge anyway, not just penis and vagina baby. Like, let's talk about how this really works. So I'm glad we were able to have this discussion.
Yes.
Nichelle, give us some. So we talked about lactation tea and maternity, but now we got period tea. What's the period tea, girl?
Good. I told y'all, I be out here in these internet streets. It's wild. Okay. I call like the internet the wild. Like, I'm out in the wild. And you just hear certain things. And again, this is not a shaming thing, but it's just kind of like, it helps you to see and to know that like there are deficits, things that we need to learn. And for us as professionals, there are some things that kind of strike us like they're second nature. Like, when I said that to Courtney and Tiffany, they were like, what? Like, absolutely, because that is the field that they work in. I have no idea. So some of the tea out here be like, you can't get pregnant if you haven't started your period. Just things like that you hear and you see. Now, listen, I'm going to default to y'all because, Tiffany, I know you're the professional in this. So, like, give us a tea. Is that true? Can you get pregnant if you have not started your period? Is that sort of like the defining moment of pregnancy?
So 100% you can get pregnant before you start your period. And the reason is because you have to ovulate to even have a period. If you haven't ovulated, your body does not signal, your brain doesn't signal to your ovaries, and then have a sharp decrease in FSH, LH, estrogen. We just talked about that. Your body will not increase the progesterone that needs to increase in order to thicken the lining of your cervix, and then let it all go because you're not pregnant. Like, there, certain things have to happen in a certain order. And one of those things is that you have to ovulate in order to either get pregnant or to have a period. And so you hear people say two things. I usually hear either one, a young woman, a young adolescent girl can't get pregnant because she's never started her period. That's not true. And or a person who just had a baby cannot get pregnant because her or their period hasn't come back yet. That's not true either, because again, you ovulate before you start your period. And so what I used to tell my students a lot of times when we were going over this chapter in the book, and for their own personal knowledge, don't play with that. Like, if your period is not regular, if your period has stopped for some reason, you're going through secondary amenorrhea, you don't know when you're going to ovulate. It is going to come as a complete surprise. So be very, very careful, because you can't predict it.
And so
nobody can.
And so is that baby is going to be a big surprise. When
You know what's funny? When I was on the floor as an L&D nurse, I may have been about 24, 25. And I had this patient, and she had her cousin with her as her support person. And so, they were around my age. So they were just talking to me like, oh, you're really young to be a nurse, kind of thing. And she asked if I had kids. And I was like, nope, no kids yet. And she was like, what? Girl, you did good. Because sometimes you can't stop yourself from getting pregnant.
Yes, you can.
I was like, yeah, you actually can. You really can. And she was like, well, she did good because she only got one. I got three. And I was like, oh dear Lord. Oh dear Lord. Yeah. So please share this with the people so that they know how to stop themselves from getting pregnant if they don't want to be pregnant.
I'm going to take it a step further as we're wrapping this up. But if you have sons of a certain age and they are out here engaging, as a mother of a son, my son is my oldest child. As a mom of a son, my son needs to know what can happen when he is engaging with the uterus. Okay. He is not being careful, because that responsibility, again, it takes two, to make a thing over. Who says that? Whose song is that? I don't know. Okay, whatever. I'm going to look it up. Put it in the show notes. But it takes two. And so, we really have to start teaching, like we said, it's not just on the person with the uterus. We have to start teaching the partners. And this goes into things like birth control and STDs and reproductive health. Like, we have to start making sure that everybody is on the same page. And I mean, I've been married for 8 years? Oh, it's been a long time. I'm still teaching my spouse things about, like, this is how the body operates. Okay. This is how we have to move to avoid certain situations or to embark on certain situations. So definitely teaching the partner, the person without the uterus, that, listen, these are the things that can happen.
Nichelle, Rob Bass sings "It Takes Two." Did you really not know that?
I don't be knowing names, okay? I'm not good with names.
I'm too.
Nichelle is city girl age, okay?
I kind of like Run DMC, and LL Cool J. I need.
Okay, I got to go. That did it for me.
Well, on that note, yes, it takes two. So please learn your bodies, learn how your bodies really work, and let us know what you think. Are you going to try natural family planning? Let us know. Have you tried it before? Let us know.
I want to hear about somebody's crazy period story. What happened when you started your period?
Yes. Please hit us up on Instagram and let us know if you feel comfortable, obviously.
Yeah.
What happened? How did you find out about a period? And what happened when you first got yours?
if I can share my help with a tampon story, surely y'all can share your story. I'm gonna tag my friends too. I'm gonna tag my friends that help me too. Like, y'all remember this?
My mom is gonna listen to this. My mom is gonna listen to this episode and be shaking her head. Y'all all gonna get TSS.
Well, I don't use tampons. I use period panties. They're the best thing in the world, and they're environmentally friendly.
That's a different show, but I can't wrap my brain around that. But that's a different show for a different day. We got to get out of here. So thank you guys. Thank you, Tiffany and Nichelle. As always, it is a pleasure chatting with y'all. I learned so much about y'all. Like, although I talk to y'all all the time, I still learn so much more about y'all through these conversations. And, you know, these conversations are helpful for me. So I hope it's helpful for you and our audience. And can't wait to talk next week.
Yes. Bye, guys.
Bye. I don't know how to stop.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Just Between Uterus podcast. Please like, subscribe, and share with your friends.
We want to hear from you. Follow us on social media at Just Between Uterus.
And email us at info@justbetweenuterus.com.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't put that in there. Don't put that in there.